No, it's a Friday. Drop it. We have got quite the power panel for you guys today. Ilona Minkovsky joins us. Hey, Ilona, how you doing?
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. Ilona's guy was on a million different things. I can't begin to tell you all of them, but of course, probably best known for HuffPost Live.
Yeah.
Top political correspondent there, recently on Salon, and now with Trade Ideas for Real Vision TV. And Amy Vieira. You know, Amy, this is the first time we've had I think, an active candidate as part of the panel.
Thank you.
Running in Nevada's 4th district.
Yes.
And Amy's been on the program before. I've interviewed you here, Rebel headquarters, etc. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me again.
All right, wonderful. And that guy's Johnny Pie. Okay, so John's
I've been here before.
Yeah. So just a quick fun thing before we get to breaking news and all the other news, which is of course plentiful today. The NRA TV's been attacking us for a couple of days. I think they're trying to boost our ratings. And so of course when any right winger attacks me, what do? They oh, he has a different name.
It's funny stuff.
Oh,
it's really
it
good.
Is. In case you were wondering, it is Cenk Uygur, and of course he's like, oh, Tank, I got him. From the guy whose name is Dan Bongo Bongo, so two can play at this game. Ever been in an Italian Berlusconi party? Although that's probably too much fun for you.
I don't know if he's gonna get that reference.
Oh, by the way, NRA, I think for your members, you might want to buy a shirt like this from shoptyt.com. It has $5,000 a bullet. It's an homage to Chris Rock. And hey, you guys are funded by weapons manufacturers, so that's more profit for you guys. Let's pass the law. Everybody else, shoptyt.com. Make fun of the NRA. Make friends. Be a good person. Okay.
Here.
Okay, John, breaking news.
Yes, breaking news. Not long before we went live, Congressman, Republican, Blake Farenthold has resigned after ongoing scandals related to sexual harassment, gender-based discrimination, concerns about whether he had repaid a huge amount of taxpayer money, something like $84,000, $85,000 that had gone towards his defense in those matters, was going to hold on until the end of his current term and then slink off into the woods. But he decided abruptly that he was in fact leaving, and he gave a statement. I'm not gonna read the whole thing because he doesn't merit it. But the end says, while I planned on serving out the remainder of my term in Congress, I know in my heart it's time for me to move along and look for new ways to serve. But I will save him some time. Your service will not be required anymore. You can just go away, actually.
We know what I loved here is that in December, when this first broke, the statement that he gave was, I had no idea how to run a congressional office. And it's like, well, that's not the problem here, is that clearly you just didn't know how to interact with the opposite sex. It's not about whether or not you know how to run a congressional office. You're not supposed to tell people that you have sexual fantasies and wet dreams about them unsolicited, especially if they're somebody who you work with in a professional capacity.
It seems like he still doesn't get that in a non-congressional office, you're also not allowed to talk about wet dreams, okay? Especially for your subordinates or anyone, just don't do it. And he's such a sleazy politician. He said, oh, the $84,000 that I made taxpayers pay for my sexual harassment problems, oh, I will pay that back. Later, they're like, wait, but you didn't. He's like, well, maybe later. And he still hasn't. Now he's resigning. He still hasn't paid it back. So I want to be clear. Why is it happening today? Because he said he was going to just go through the investigation at the congressional level, and then he would make a decision. Obviously, investigation didn't go well. Okay, the conclusions were going to be really bad. Republicans don't retire unless it's disastrous news. And that is the news he was about to receive. Otherwise, he would have gone to the end of his term and then quietly could have stepped down. Him saying all of a sudden, I gotta go now, means it was really, really bad. Yeah. Now, Amy, you actually had someone in your race, the incumbent, that also stepped down, right?
Well, he didn't step down, but he's decided not to run again. So he has said he will not run in the race. Then at the last minute, he was putting feelers out there that I possibly might run again. And then he held all of us waiting. There was local Nevada papers and political commentators that were talking about is he or isn't he. But it's the same thing, and this is just a drop in the bucket of the money that's paid by taxpayers for many of our current legislators, and it's something that definitely needs to be addressed. We have other things we could be spending the money on besides defending people who don't know how to be professional.
Yeah, indeed. Perhaps the worst expenditure of taxpayer money, even worse than some of the stuff that Scott Pruitt was up to.
Yeah. One final thing I want to say about this is that hearing the story, obviously this is a good thing, but I actually, the topic I find to be reminded, it's a little bit depressing because back in the mid to late last year, we were moving into the Me Too movement and the dominoes were starting to fall in entertainment and in business in some respects. And we were talking on the show about how this has to come to DC because of the amount of corruption and entitlement and the culture there. And 2 days later, after we had that discussion, some congresswomen and senators started talking about their experiences, both themselves being discriminated against and harassed in an incredibly routine and casual manner, about interns and employees being harassed by a number of different offices. And then very little actually came of it. Attempts to implement new rules have been barred or put into bills and then yanked at the last minute. Al Franken went down and Blake Farenthold, and that's about it. And I don't think anyone believes that that's the extent of the problem in DC.
Yeah, well, that's why you have to keep the pressure on, though, right? Unfortunately, you got to keep the momentum going. Otherwise, we're going to have a big fuss, talks about reform, and then nothing actually happens. And because I think most people, myself included, I had no idea how corrupt the congressional system was for anybody who might want to try to report, any kind of sexual harassment. And I know the people were outraged. My parents, who I never agree with politically, were outraged that that's where their taxpayer dollars were going to. And then now it's just kind of been forgotten about. So anybody who's like, oh, we've had enough Me Too, it's too much, and part of the everyday conversation, it's not enough until you see actual change.
Yeah. Journalist in Texas, she just email Farenthold once a week, once a month, whatever you want. Be like, hey, when's that $84,000 coming? Just for the rest of his life. Still waiting on the $84,000. When is it coming? Okay,
we'll try to set that up. Okay, some more big news for you. Are we in a trade war? I hear routinely from defenders of the president that we're not, but I also hear from him that we've already lost the trade war, or if we engage in one, they're easy to win, but that we've then lost. It switches back and forth a lot. So I'm just gonna lay out the facts from the past week, and then we're gonna try to figure out what the current state of our trade policy with China is. So earlier this week, the US announced new tariffs on $50 billion worth of Chinese goods, claiming that China is stealing US intellectual property. Although to be fair, US scientists have stolen the Chinese hoax of global warming, so I guess we've gotten a little bit back for our money. So the US threatened to levy import taxes on more than 1,300 Chinese products, including TVs, dishwashers, and printers, also aircraft and chemicals and automobiles. And so in turn, China vowed to target key US exports, including soybeans, but also interestingly, Levi's, whiskey, and Harley Davidson's, amongst others. And so that amounted to about $50 billion worth of tariffs on US goods. So great, both of our economies are gonna be doing much better as a result of 50 billion one way, 50 billion the other way. And so Donald Trump saw that and said, in light of China's unfair retaliation, I've instructed the US Trade Representative to consider whether $100 billion of additional tariffs would be appropriate. That came late last evening. And so the Chinese heard about it though. And they said this: if the United States disregards the opposition of China and the international community and insists on unilateralist and protectionist trade practices, the Chinese side will follow through to the end and will not hesitate to fight back at any cost. Ministry spokesman Gao Feng said, we are prepared and have already formulated very detailed countermeasures. So we put tariffs on them and they put them back on us, and so we doubled down on them, and now they seem to be prepared to do the same to us, which is an interesting situation to be in. I think academics have a term for that. But anyway, why don't we go to a little bit of the president defending this recent move, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion.
We have a trade deficit, depending on the way you calculate, of $504 billion. Now, some people would say it's really $375 billion. in particular with China. We're going to be doing a Section 301 trade action. It could be about $60 billion, but that's really just a fraction of what we're talking about. I've asked them to reduce the trade deficit immediately by $100 billion. It's a lot. So that would be anywhere from 25%, depending on the way you figure, to maybe something even more than that. But we have to do that.
So we're doing that.
Okay, my favorite parts, so much fun here, until of course the trade war actually begins, and then not fun for anyone. First of all, he says, there's a trade deficit of 500 billion, some say 375 billion. You know why some say that? Because that's the real number. He had earlier said $500 billion, so that's why they told him, hey, knucklehead, you got it wrong for the billionth time in a row. So he's like, well, it's still 500. But I'm saying some say 375 billion. So that was a fun part. And then another fun part was after they do these round of tariff threats, they say, in light of China's unfair retaliation, as John read to you. But wait, we struck first. Now look, don't get me wrong, China does a lot of things, manipulation of their currency, and they do attack our intellectual property, etc. And as a lot of people in politics are rightfully pointing out, there are smart ways to address that. This is not among them, right? But when we go out and go, we will be doing tariffs on you, 50 billion, then 100 billion, right? And they retaliate, you can't then cry about it and go, that is such unfair retaliation, I can't believe they did that. That is the most believable thing in the world. Of course they're gonna retaliate. That's kind of how this stuff works. And the fact that he, as usual, couldn't see it coming is hilarious and depressing. And then I like China's quote. They said that they will, quote, counterattack with great strength. My guess is they said it that way so to get Trump's attention. They know the knuckleheads, you're either weak or you're strong. You either lose or you win. So they're like, we're coming at you with great strength. He's like, oh no.
Well, he also said that $100 billion. It just like, I can't help it. It makes me think of Austin Powers, the way that he pronounces the number, because it feels unreal, because that's the way, unfortunately, everything is when you have a president who acts like a petulant child, right? And makes everything a tit for tat, wants to wag his stick and show who has the largest one. And then, like you guys pointed out, if these policies go into effect, if they're implemented, it's the American voters who actually helped put him into office that are going to be hurting from it. People who work in agriculture, people who work in manufacturing and production. And it's a lose-lose, for either side. Our two economies are so interconnected and interdependent, but that's what you get when everybody wants to play around with words and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars.
I think it's actually even like worse than that. So as a financial person, before I ran for Congress, he's sitting here talking about what he's planning to do. There are ways that we could effectively improve our situation nationally in our trade deals. We definitely need to renegotiate all of them, ensuring that people internationally are also protected, as well as the interest of America as far as being able to regulate these deals as well. But the one thing that I found most ridiculous about his tantrum that he threw over this deal was that he failed to even talk about another source of our economy that's being outsourced, and that's through our own American companies that he just gave a huge tax break to, and pretty much just gave them, you know what, we'll just make you pay a minimum tax to bring all that offshore money back into the United States when they're able to profit off of wages in countries of people that are not livable, that are being detrimentally affected. And yet we are not really addressing that problem within our own country. And then he's going and doing this extreme measure, in other countries, and yet rewarding American companies that are not keeping their jobs here in America. So it's very, it's just being a hypocrite to me.
So let me double down on that and give even a little bit more context. So why? Why is he doing that? So there is the right way to do it, which is, for example, I'm against the TPP, and the reason for that is that it gives multinational corporations sovereignty over our laws and other countries' laws. It's not that we're against free trade; it's that we want it to be on behalf of the citizens, not on behalf of corporations, and there's a giant difference. The reason Donald Trump can't say that, the reality of the situation, even though he knows that that is popular position, that's why he took it during the campaign. He can't say it because those corporations are his donors.
Yeah.
So that's why he's got to say, oh, I'm going to take on China, because saying he's going to take on multinational corporations is not going to play well in raising funding for his campaign and the Republican campaigns overall.
Yeah.
And the right way to do it would be through a series of countermeasures where then you force China to react to you publicly, and that makes them the bad guy. And yes, it does matter because it matters and how the rest of the world reacts, Europe, et cetera. That's a strategic way of handling it. The second reason why Trump says it so brashly and openly is because he doesn't care about doing it the right way. Of course, partly because he's not bright enough, but the other reason is so that he can take credit. It's about politics. I was tough with China. Now, was that the best strategy? No. But it helped him politically because with his knucklehead voters, they're like, oh, he went like this to China, and I noticed that, and so he must be a tough guy.
But I hate to interrupt you for a moment, but Cenk, you and I have talked about this before too. That I feel the same way with with Russia when people bring it up. Is that's the way our politics works. Is unfortunately we are so focused on optics, and you just want somebody to act tough and say that they were tough, and so nobody actually thinks through policy, what it's going to mean, what the consequences or repercussions of it might be. It's all about whether you stood tough and talked tough or not. And I think that kind of spreads all around. And so, let's think about how shallow we can be a lot of the time.
Yeah, and he doesn't, he's been talking about China and our trade deficit with them since back during the election, and he's been talking about tariffs, and that was one of the things I was worried about when he became president, was he talked about tariffs like this. And I still, after all this time, I don't think he actually knows what the trade deficit actually represents.
No way.
He thinks it's just a measure of competition and not a reflection of our industries which change over time. And in terms of arithmetic, I find it frustrating because he seems to think it's too big, it needs to be smaller. How much smaller? Well, he's proposed $150 billion smaller. But he originally thought it was $500 billion, and now he seems to accept it's $375 billion. That's almost exactly how much smaller he thought it needed to be. So why are we going through this whole process? And one thing I would like is, there's been a lot of news coverage of this today, and the analogy that everyone's got, if we had the technology, we'd do one of those John Oliver style things of everybody saying it, is that he's engaged in a game of chicken with China, and he refuses to swerve. But he's not engaged in a game of chicken, because in a game of chicken, you risk yourself. He's not risking himself. If it crashes, it's the economy that crashes, not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to be just fine. His voters could be ruined. They could lose their industries, they could lose their houses and all of that. But he's going to be fine. So stop acting like he's being brash and bold. You can be very bold with other people's money. That's easy.
Well, he's done that his whole life. And I like to end on two more fun quotes. Larry Kudlow, who is talking head on television, nothing wrong with that per se, but it should not be.
I hate them personally,
but not necessarily the right position, right person for the position of National Economic Advisor to the president. Anyway, that's what he is now. He's always been for free trade and against tariffs. Now, because he's working under the thumb of Donald Trump, he's like, yeah, tariffs, good idea. And he actually had a huge fight the other day with one of the Fox Business hosts that he used to be friends with. Anyway, he wrote, or he said, trying to explain this away, we're not running a trade war. Nothing's happened. Nothing has been executed. There's no there yet, but there will be. In other words, trying to split the baby. Like, don't panic, markets. Markets, don't panic. There's no trade war. But Donald Trump, don't fire me, because there will be. Trust me, there will be. But there isn't. But there will be. But there isn't. So, but again, for any Trump advisor, and I can't stand Larry Kudlow, but any Trump advisor I feel bad for, because it's an impossible job.
Yeah.
You have to somehow try to make sure the world doesn't explode while your boss is trying to make it explode. And finally, if you don't believe us, maybe you'll believe a deeply right-wing Republican from Nebraska, classy Ben Sasse. Okay, he said about the sanctions, this is the tariffs, I should say, the dumbest possible way to do this. That's a direct quote. He said, hopefully the president is just blowing off steam again, but if he's even half serious, this is nuts. And added, China is guilty of many things, but the president has no actual plan to win right now. He's threatening to light American agriculture on fire.
Damn. Member of the resistance, Ben Sasse.
And I feel like I gotta clarify every time. I know it's Ben Sass, but it's fun to say classy Ben Sasse. Okay, yeah. All right, we gotta take a quick break here, guys. A lot more madness when we return.
The American elections are designed to suppress the vote. They're not designed to get people fired up. They don't want people interested. We live in an oligarchy. None of this matters anyway. Your democracy has already been stolen from you. 90% of the people in America want some kind of gun regulation. We don't get it. 80% of people want a public option. We ain't never getting it. So legislation does not correlate to the citizenry anymore. We already live in an oligarchy. Capitalism is failing worldwide. Not one question about Brexit, not one question about what to do when the banks fail here, not one question, nothing. So it's the establishment with their head firmly in the sand, right? And just there needs to be a revolution in America because all of our institutions are completely corrupt, especially the news media, right? So we've got 6 companies running all the things that we hear and see. And this was a perfect example of how they're part of the problem. Again, Trump, not the problem. He's a symptom of the problem. This is all part of the problem. This is why half the country doesn't vote. Hillary Clinton's still not trying to go get those people to vote. What she's trying to do is trying to get more right-wingers to vote for her. Still not trying to talk to the people who have tuned out of this election because they know there's no way to vote against more war. There's no way to vote against Goldman Sachs. There's no way to vote against more fracking or the oil industry. There's no way to vote against. Both parties are co-opted by the same people, and we need a party for the American people.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, we were doing a press release on it and I got all worked up and I said, okay, well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion.
Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
No, that's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking, one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views.
They said you couldn't do it, you can't change the media, don't try. Well, here we are, we're changing the media. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Doc, I'm telling you, the talking, this therapy, none of this is working for me.
Grace, I want to try something new with you today.
Really?
Yeah, bear with me. What do you see?
Blood.
Okay.
More blood.
Okay, good. How about this one?
Buckets of blood on the floor.
Okay.
The Zodiac Code. A disembodied head. John Wilkes Booth.
Okay.
John Wayne Gacy. A dead body, your dead body.
But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
All right, back on the Young Turks. A couple of fun tweets for you guys. Lucifer has tweeted in, so
it's Lucifer.
Oh, I see. Okay. By the way, it's Amy Villela. Of course, ironically, as I was making fun of Dan Bongo Bongo, I screwed up Amy's name, which is very like me. Anyway, and the NRA is not going to be surprised to find out Lucifer is watching the Young Turks. But he tweets in about Fahrenholtz. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. He mainly got himself, but yes. And Patrick, going off of what Alona mentioned, says Dr. Evil would make a better president, would at least have frickin' sharks with frickin' laser beams on their head. Don't tell him. He's probably gonna think, wait, can we do that?
Yeah.
Can we do that?
He would have a mini Trump if he could.
Oh.
I think we all know that.
Of course he would. All right, what's next, John?
Okay, big news is next. This week, Donald Trump appears to have spent a good portion of his executive time following Fox News' coverage of the migrant caravan that's currently traveling across Mexico. He's very interested in it. He's not really interested in the actual caravan or what it represents or why it was organized, but he is very much interested in the right-wing fantasy version of it that I believe is probably inspired by the racist French 70s novel Camp of the Saints. So he has been spreading some conspiracy theories about that. We want to help to correct the record a little bit today and talk about why these caravans are happening and what's gonna happen with it. So since 2014, the Mexican government has been cracking down on people traveling through to the United States. The crackdown has resulted in the detention and deportation of about 950,000 people. And according to a 2015 United Nations report, widespread torture of a particularly grotesque nature. So the nonprofit Pueblos Sin Fronteras has organized caravans annually to draw attention to the plight of Central American migrants and to the logic of safety in numbers. They believe that they will be less likely to be the target of abuse and assaults and theft and rape and things like that if they stay together. Unfortunately, that extra size creates extra focus on what you're doing from people who want to use your caravan to push a political message, which is what we're seeing right now. And so Donald Trump has been talking particularly about sexual assault in the caravans. We're gonna take a look at one of his comments on that.
They're not putting their good ones. And remember my opening remarks at Trump Tower when I opened. Everybody said, oh, he was so tough. And I used the word rape. And yesterday it came out where this journey coming up, women are raped at levels that nobody's ever seen before. They don't want to mention that.
So, I mean, he referenced himself, one of the first things that we saw of him as a candidate. And that video right there and his general messaging about this caravan, I find to be one of the worst things that he's done. Both the idea that they're not putting their best, as if the Mexican government or the Honduran government they've got trucks and they're like, okay, who are we gonna put on them? Not that these are people trying to flee from violence and instability that in no small part you can track back to US activities over the past few decades, that they're trying to save themselves and their kids and get some sort of better life. No, they're being sent because they are trash and they don't want them in their own country, so they're sending them away. And then he talks about the rape there. And so there have been reports, by the way, saying that the vast majority of migrants traveling through Latin America, Central America, and through Mexico are the targets of various sorts of abuse. Not in this particular caravan. An embedded reporter says that one of the caravan organizers say that there have been no reports, none whatsoever, of sexual assault. Now that doesn't mean that there necessarily hasn't been any, but it doesn't seem like that is a principal problem, especially when you consider that one of the principal reasons these are set up is to protect the women. And what he's saying there is that those assaults are happening in the caravan. They're happening by people in the caravan. That these are not people trying to protect themselves, that they are potential rapists trying to come into our country. And by the way, he highlights what he believes to be rape in the caravan, not as a reason to help the people, but a reason to bar the people from entering our country. He says they're victims and so screw them, they're not getting in here.
So you mean a man accused by multiple women of sexual harassment and sexual assault is now using sexual assault as a political weapon to dehumanize other people?
It appears that way.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, look, let me double down on what both of you just said. First of all, he apparently doesn't have any problem talking about the concept. So look, we didn't bring it up, he brought it up. it's not just sexual assault and sexual harassment, which are horrific. He was accused of rape by his own wife in sworn testimony. Later, she said, I didn't mean after they settled and she got the money she was looking for. Look, I'm keeping it real. That's what happened. That's what happened in the divorce proceedings. She said, I didn't mean rape in the legal or literal sense. What other sense is there of rape? So, and he had attacked her, ripped her hair out, assaulted her, and then raped her in one instance because he didn't like the hair transplant doctor that she had suggested, okay? That's the kind of man this is. But that is relevant to this story because all he ever does is projection, right? Oh, they are the ones doing rape like you've never heard before, right? Their government has these evil intentions, bad intentions. That's why they are putting them in the caravan. So he knows I like to do bad things and I want to order things like that. So I assume that's what the government of Mexico and Honduras are doing. But then to double down on what John said, it has a very Camp of the Saints feel to it. If you don't know the book, congratulations. It's a horrible racist book from back in the 1970s that has now become the Bible for the alt-right. Mark Stein recently talked about it on Fox News. Steve Bannon has referred to it over and over and over again. Breitbart glowingly refers to it. And it is a viciously racist book where immigrants are coming to France, 800,000 Indian immigrants. And they are referred to in very sexual ways. I mean, rivers of sperm they talk about in the book, and here it is, Trump talking about it in these immigrants that are coming that are very sexually oriented, etc. And the plot in the book is the immigrants have a plot. They have been sent to take over the Western white world. And the hero of the book's job is to murder them all. Okay, that's the thing that they look up to. That's why he talks in ways that make no sense. Because if you break it down and you go, wait, you really think the government of Honduras like loaded up a caravan of people, that it wasn't that they were fleeing from the violence that happened from the election, but that it was a plot by the government of Honduras to do what? To send people over to America to do what? You would have to be a lunatic to believe in that conspiracy theory. And it's because their frame of mind is from that the immigrants are invading, just like they told us in Camp of the Saints.
But it's a distraction technique too, because then anything else that's going negatively for the Trump administration, for Americans in the economy, you just blame it on the other, right? You blame it on Muslims, you blame it on immigrants, wherever they're coming from, you blame it on refugees. That's the way that Donald Trump became president. He used that kind of fear tactic. You see it all over the world right now in European nations. You see it in Russia too, with that kind of nationalism, and that's why he continues to use it, because it works. Like you said, the right-wing media, Fox, so many of the other outlets. If you just conjure up this image of a huge caravan of murderers and rapists moving towards the United States, and as if we don't have enough security to stop this caravan before it breaks in, then that'll get people afraid of that, focused on that, and not on anything else.
This issue is very close to me. Not only is my husband an immigrant, but my brother-in-law made that trip from Mexico. And what they don't understand, because they aren't really concerned with what's truly happening, is it's not the people who are actually trying to immigrate to America that are raping each other. It's usually the people they're hiring to bring them in.
Taking advantage of them.
Yes, they're taking advantage of them. And when we talk about these things, we need to start talking about it, and also the United States' responsibility in what's happening. How many coups have we done in South and Central America, where people have chosen leaders that would be for the best interest of the people, but yet we are determined to make sure that we have oligarchy regimes in place, and they are trying to desperately find a better mode of life for them and their families. I've been to Mexico many times. I've driven all the way through Mexico down to Puebla, and it really, that first time I went through with my brother-in-law, it opened my eyes. I started thinking about it in real terms. And if I was a family and a mother or someone who was living here, and I had these children or these family members, what would I do to ensure my family was okay? And we are also contributing to what's happening in Mexico. We have American companies paying substandard living wages to these people, and they don't have real means of being able to provide for their family. One person coming to the United States can take care of many family family members.
Yeah.
And that's the humanity part that we seem to forget. If we were in their situation, what would we be doing?
Well, people act out of desperation. I just wanted to point out one more thing that I'm sure you guys have brought up many times on the show too, which is that a lot of the migrants in this caravan are planning on applying for asylum, right? They're already being targeted and labeled as illegals by a lot of people on the right. And again, that kind of language completely just washes away what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve, how they're trying to find themselves a better life.
Yeah, I want to talk about a couple of things you guys mentioned. Number one, there is a right way to talk about this. It's not like rape does not happen in those travels, and not in the caravan, because that's the whole point of the caravan, is to protect everyone. That's why they're sticking together. But it does happen fairly regularly, and it is a tragic story. But if, to John's point, if Trump said, look, that happens from time to time, and it's a tragedy, let's figure out how to prevent it, we'd be having a really rational conversation about a serious problem. Instead, he politicizes it and makes it seem like it's the fault of the people who are the victims. And by the way, I want to correct something. I earlier had stated that the caravan is not as big as they claim and doesn't exist in the way that Trump had said. It does. It is a real caravan. It does happen regularly, which then leads to the point that Alona, I had said that on earlier shows, Alona pointed out, which is that this caravan is now fairly significant, about 1,100 people, so that part is true, okay? You don't sneak in with 1,100 people. And one of the organizers said that's the whole point. Like we're coming here to seek asylum. That's why it's super obvious. You don't do a giant caravan to sneak into the country. That's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and according to the organizers, they are in fact going to be stopping the journey in Mexico City. That is as far as the caravan is going to go. It is believed that a few hundred perhaps, will continue to try to get in, either through asylum or other means. But they're not going to be trying to move. Like the idea that they're going to march hundreds of people in lockstep across the border is ridiculous.
And then they can like climb on, help each other, boost them over the wall.
Exactly,
or
yeah. But it's this is Fox News. You can say almost anything. One of the things that bothers me the most is this whole feeding frenzy from the right over this issue, where this is, if you turn into Fox News, which you shouldn't, or Tucker Carlson especially, which you shouldn't, you'll hear about this randomly throughout the week. They love this story. It reminds me so much of the discussion when so many Syrians desperately needed our help. I know that the right loves to pretend that they think America's great and the left hates America. I have this crazy idea that America is strong enough and capable enough that if some Hondurans need our help, I think we can help them out. I think we could let them in, and I think our country would probably be okay at the end of it. But they don't think that. They think that that would be the end of America, and so they need to be stopped. And so, as Alona pointed out, they are dehumanizing these people. They're trying to pretend that these victims are themselves the problem. So these people who are abused and raped and assaulted when they're coming here, they are the rapists. In the same way that the Syrians who were so desperately fleeing terrorists in their home and the regime that was trying to kill them, they are the terrorists and thus can't be allowed in. And I hesitate to even read this, but I want to be clear about the language they're using. So the National Guard is going to be deployed to try to stop them. And what's going to happen from that? Some people say it's just going to be a visual deterrent. Ann Coulter was asked about that. Will they just be a visual deterrent? And she says, I don't know, we'll see. If I were an illegal, unless they're going to shoot one and send a message to the rest, as Voltaire's line in Candide is, we hang one to encourage the others. If you shoot one to encourage the others, maybe they'll learn, but otherwise, we'll see.
What's really striking about this is that we're talking about sending our troops down to the border for a problem that doesn't even exist. But yet these troops should be deployed to Puerto Rico. There are so many other problems and ways that our energies need to be diverted in this country. And yet we are again at the mercy of a president that right now is acting, well, I would say he's acting irrationally, but I think it's rational in his own mind. He is playing to his base and at the expense of human lives and suffering. And we, as a country, again, we talk about the refugees and people from other countries, but I see it from a very different viewpoint than maybe than some others do. That what is America's part and what do they play, and why these people are in the situation that they're in. We talk about the Syrians, or we talk about other people. What has been America's part in that?
Yeah. So we had 2 people banned on the show, and the reason we banned them is not because we disagreed with them, but because we thought they were actors who were just trying to get attention. Their names were Ann Coulter and Donald Trump. And literal, we had them banned for years and years. We would never talk about their stories because it was obvious that they were just trying to troll the whole country. Unfortunately, it worked, so now we don't have a choice. And so Trump is president, and Coulter is to some degree dictating policy. And so when Trump talked about doing the DACA deal, Coulter yelled at him, and I guess he was chastised by that, and decided, oh, well, I have to appease Coulter and the kind of monsters that she plays into. And yeah, I think she's an actress. I debated her once and I asked her about it, and she almost admitted it and then realized what she was doing and then backpedaled and was like, oh, I hate the Browning of America. Okay, so she plays a racist on TV. It's really sad that that works, that's, I mean, she of course has no moral center, that's how she makes a living, but it's sad that there's enough people that it appeals to that she makes a good living, and Donald Trump, using those same strategies, became the president of the United States. So when she says something as abhorrent as, maybe we should shoot one to teach him a lesson, we all recoil and a lot of people will be outraged. But I bet you there's a giant chunk of the country who thinks that makes sense. I don't know if the number is 20%, 30 or 40. But it's a big number.
Well, but go ahead. Sorry, I was just gonna say you're right that at the end of the day, though, Ann Coulter gets headlines for that. We're sitting here talking about Ann Coulter. You know, she gets paid, and other people actually buy into and believe what she's saying.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, she can talk about Voltaire to pretend that she's high-minded in some fashion, but we know where they choose one and kill them to send a message. It's in the worst prison camps and the worst dictatorships and fascist regimes in the history of the past 100, 200 years. And she apparently thinks that America has not taken enough steps along that path. Perhaps we could take another one and use this border security thing as an opportunity.
Yep. All right, guys, we got to take another quick break here. When we come back, more chaos in the Trump White House. Will he fire Pruitt or the guy trying to fire Pruitt? Drums, that's soap opera when we return. Now, you guys are gonna think, especially my early behind the scenes footage, like I already went and looked at the comments in the member section. You guys, oh, he's high, he's drunk. I swear to you, I'm not. Well, I just tell you if I am, right? And so I get goofy in the behind the scenes stuff.
What's the need for the butter with this pretzel? This is already super fattening it up. You don't need to put butter on this thing. Why'd they make me do it, Bitsy? Why'd they make me do it?
Hey, I'm just saying that this is known as the rear end guy. There's no way that every person he knows doesn't call him the rear end guy. I want you guys to see if you could see the lightning bugs. Whoa. Light them up. Light them up.
Is it true, Bitsy? I will now watch it later.
Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat. Imagine him, isn't it? Hey, Kiki Cat. Kiki Cat. All right, this is Kiki Cat signing out.
See anyone you recognize? Maybe something you're curious about? It's okay. No need to be ashamed. I think it's normal to mull over the macabre from time to time.
I mean, it just goes to show something about human nature. Why would we rather her had killed, 650 people in all these awful ways?
I mean, this is like your Leatherface chainsaw, like a boogeyman.
I think that a lot of these people were like, you know what's more powerful than the president? The person who kills the president.
There is a dark side to human nature that we all want to explore. So you stay up late, reading about what happened, how it happened.
They would have shown all these girls that were being held captive if they had played it on a video cassette player, but they said we didn't have a cassette player, so we didn't play the tapes.
They couldn't get one?
As soon as they went to go check out Ed Gein, well, it became pretty obvious that he had done it.
Yeah, he wasn't even sly.
Yeah, you walk into Ed Gein's house and you have walked into Ed Gein's house.
The media wants to find a boogeyman. At the end of the day, they want to find an answer that they can pin something on, even if it's not the most accurate or correct.
I absolutely think that the parents are hiding something.
Right.
Something's not adding up. Isn't adding up about their story. The Anchorage Police Department said that her lifestyle left a lot to be desired. Even though they interviewed Robert Hansen, they still were like, you're a slut.
Statistically, we've all met someone who's murdered someone.
It's murder with friends. Don't be scared. You're among friends.
Do you hear the thunder rolling across the land? That's Godoy the gavel.
We go to the Chief Justice here. Jesus Godoy. Drop.
Breaking the back of injustice. He makes the call.
Can I jump in quick?
No, you can't.
He takes the shots.
I'm for it. We have to start somewhere already.
Don't try to pull the wool over this man's eyes, or you'll end up with a mouth full of wool and an ear full of reason.
You don't realize everything after. I actually wasn't that sure. Jesus inspired me.
Without this judge,
Jesus was persuasive.
Our great discourses would be torn asunder.
I think she has a strong case. Strong case.
And someone sent me a message on Snapchat, but now I can't find it. What do I do? Go. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, John Iadarola, Amy Villela, and Ilona Minkowski. So I've got a couple of notes for you guys, and then I actually want to talk about Amy's race a tiny bit before we go to the next stories. iSurf writes in on YouTube Super Chat. I said all of our names again because I think that this might not be a positive comment, but hey, you use YouTube Super Chat, so thank you for helping the show. Hi, I'm Denk. Okay, at least you paid the show though, so thank you.
I think that's a Voltaire quote.
Dank is kind of the thing though, right? Yeah. I mean, that's a positive word.
Yeah, and apparently Bongo Bongo is now watching, and he's talking about the size of his audience. Please go get 8 billion views, then we'll have a conversation. Anyway, and then I wanted to read Tim Klein Jr., who talks about that, writing hashtag TYT Live, talk to us about the show when we're live. I wonder how many awards NRA TV has won. Oh yeah, probably none. So we just yesterday talked about how we won another Streamy and help us win a Webby. So that would be great. That's coming up next. We're up for Best News and Politics. Again, what can I do?
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you. And Alona's got a couple of those from the HuffPost days.
We
as
do,
well.
yeah.
Yes. And Dan, if you'd like, you could buy this shirt, $5,000 a bullet, at shoptyt.com. Okay. So, Amy, you're running in Nevada's 4th district. There's other Democrats in the primary. So you're the most progressive in the race. You're a Justice Democrat. You don't take corporate PAC money. You're solidly progressive platform, no question about it. So I'm sure the Democratic Party is going to want to back you, right? How many times have you heard this?
You know, it's a funny thing that the way this is going down. People that know me from before I even ran, and I have a lot of support from people within the community. But right now we have. It's definitely becoming apparent that no, I'm not going to get support directly from the party, and I'm just kind of candidate that they're not going to want to really support. You know, I'm not going to be controlled, and my purpose in running is pure, and it's for a reason. And I think that's scary to them. But you know, we've got polls going out. The DCCC is supposed to be, you know. They said they were going to stay out of primaries. And I think they should stay out of primaries. They should stay out of primaries and let the people have a decision in who they want to elect. But you know, Nevada, we're kind of notorious for, you know, not really doing that. And so yeah, they are definitely, there is a postings going out now showing that one of my opponents, who was a former congressman, who actually lost to the Republican that's running, it shows he's ahead. But what they're failing to mention, and they're saying it's just gonna be between the two of them, right? What they're failing to mention is he's actually farther behind now than he was at this point when he actually lost to the Republican.
And the Democratic Party backing someone who is lost. No, that would never happen. And repeating the same mistake. The Democratic Party, we're talking about the same party? Okay, look, we'll put Amy's links down below if you're watching later on the description box on YouTube and comment section of Facebook. But can you give everybody your website?
Sure, it's amyforthepeople.com. Or you can follow me also at Amy for the People on Twitter. So definitely share, like, tweet, donate. It would be great. Thank you.
All right, and I like that fun little handle you guys have there in the graphic. teamvillela.win/TYT for Amy. Okay, so go help Real Progressives. All right, John, what's next?
Okay, we've got, as you mentioned, drums inside of the White House, inside of DC. Scott Pruitt's big week of scandals doesn't appear to be getting any better, and so the question we're left as we're going live right now, will he be this week's 6 p.m. West Coast firing from the Trump administration? We can't go back through all of the scandals because apparently everyone around him who has dirt in him has decided to just flood the marketplace with it, but we'll touch on some of the big ones. Pruitt recently used a loophole in the Safe Drinking Water Act to give 2 of his longtime aides raises of almost $57,000 and $28,000 after the White House rejected his request for the salary increases. Pruitt insists that he didn't know that that was going on, but the law requires that he has to approve the hires, so they could perhaps look into that. And then there's so many. I mean, there's obviously the fact that he's getting this massively subsidized housing from someone who he's pushing for their clients. It's a huge quid pro quo in that way, a shady real estate deal. His insane expenses on first-class air travel, seemingly for things unrelated to his job. He has more security than the leaders of most countries. Soundproof phone booths and opposition researchers for the media and all of this stuff. It's causing a lot of problems for him. Now, he does have someone who apparently wants to clear this whole thing up and get rid of him. White House Chief of Staff John Kelly apparently told President Trump that he thinks the EPA administrator should go. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. And so that was earlier. And since then, Donald Trump actually tweeted in support of Scott Pruitt saying, "Do you believe that the fake news media is pushing hard on a story that I'm going to replace AG Jeff Sessions with EPA Chief Scott Pruitt, who is doing a great job but is totally under siege?" Do people really believe this stuff? So much of the media is dishonest and corrupt. I have a belief, maybe it's crazy, I think someone in your administration talked to the Wall Street Journal. I think that's probably as corrupt as this whole thing is. I don't think they made it up. So John Kelly wants him out, and Trump apparently doesn't want him to go. So it seems like that's a disagreement, and perhaps there's a reason for that. This is a report, again, from sources inside the White House. Emboldened in his job, Mr. Trump has rebelled against Kelly's restrictions and mused about doing away with the chief of staff post entirely. Mr. Trump recently told one confidant that he was tired of being told no by Kelly and has instead chosen to simply not tell Kelly things at all, which is a tried and true strategy of 5-year-olds around the country. But what I love about that is that he has apparently said that the chief of staff, who is an incredibly important position inside of the White House, very important to allow the president to get his agenda done, Trump doesn't want it. He wants to eliminate it and do that job himself, which is literally a subplot of The Office. That's what Dwight Schrute does. He becomes his own number 2. Donald Trump is watching too much Netflix.
But this, everyone says we want business people to run the government because if you run a business, then you can run the government. But in Donald Trump's world, running a business means just doing whatever you want and having nobody who's going to check you in any way, not having any kind of, legislators, any types of rules that are going to stop you. And so, this is kind of what we get. But to me, what's even more disappointing and kind of frustrating about this is obviously Scott Pruitt is, corrupt, as I keep wanting to curse, and then I realize that I can't. He's corrupt, and to the point where it's almost laughable how bad it is. But in the meantime, his EPA has already pushed through, or has been working on trying to push through 22 ways of deregulating, environmental protections, right? So that's like actual damage being done by the person in this position. Yeah. And what we're so frustrated about and angry about, and the reason why he might get kicked out is just because he's corrupt and he's like getting kickbacks on his rent. Or in the meantime, those are going to be life-damaging, life-threatening effects from that deregulation.
But isn't this just, just same as usual. It goes on and on. I mean, so going through this political process, even from the beginning, we see the corruption of money even just as a candidate. I mean, it starts there. Our entire government right now, most of them, and I will say this very, very boldly, is that, I believe that they are bought and paid for. I mean, this is what we're seeing down the line. I'm seeing it even with the people that I'm running against. They've taken money from corporations and they're supposed to be defenders of certain industries and certain initiatives, but yet they're taking money from exactly the opposite. And we see that with Pruitt, even in some of the things that he's been accused of. And I say that it really is starting just even from the basis of our government, and that's our the basic elected official on up, and we're seeing that. Until we start changing that, I think we're creating an environment for more John Kellys.
It reminded me just one last little anecdote when I was reading about how he wanted the sirens, put on his car so he could speed through traffic faster. That reminds me of Russia in the kind of the 90s and the early 2000s, because I remember all the time going as a kid to visit family, and you just see all these black cars whizzing by with the blue sirens, because that's what you could do in a corrupt country like that. You just throw the thing on, pass everyone by.
Which leads to my point. I was a little surprised that Scott Pruitt was in trouble for so-called corruption when that's child's play compared to what Trump does. So not only does he, of course, support Pruitt's actions against climate change or battling climate change and his corruption with the fossil fuel industry, et cetera, but like the $50 a night corruption at where he's staying is nothing compared to Trump University. So, and as we were reporting earlier in the week, it's obvious that it's someone in the administration that wanted to put a hatchet in Pruitt's back, but that doesn't mean that it was Trump. So when the White House spokesperson came out yesterday and said, we're evaluating him and we don't know what's gonna happen to him, that's when I thought he was done, because I thought Trump had sent him out to say, give him the old send off, we're evaluating, not sure about it. But it turns out, no, guys like John Kelly clearly wanted to get rid of him. They were sources for Fox News, Wall Street Journal, and they're the ones that's clearly throwing all this dirt on him. But Trump apparently not involved. So, and by the way, it's Trump. He could change his mind 8 times later today. So he might be like, oh, he's good, he's terrible, he's terrible. And then one day he'll just blurt out, he's fired, right? And he'll be gone. Or he won't. My guess is that knowing Trump's character and knowing Pruitt's character, they probably get along really, really well. And Pruitt, that's why he was trying to move up the ranks and get an even bigger position in the administration. And that's what made the other people angry. That's why they leaked all these things against him. But on the other hand, Trump might like that. Remember, he likes people battling and like punching each other in the face and doing untold damage for no reason to one another because he's amused by it. He's King Joffrey.
The culture is set at the top, right? In any kind of organization, if you set that tone, that's how the people underneath you who are working for you, working with you, that's how they're gonna act.
Yeah, I don't know, when he says something, there's so many layers to it. Like, he says, he has my support. Okay, well, those are the last words that a lot of people in the administration heard before they were booted, usually while on the toilet.
Before they got stabbed in the back.
Maybe on the way out.
Yeah, on the way out. But I do know this: when he lashes out at the media and says that a story is untrue, you can bet every cent that it's true. So maybe he gets thrown out of the EPA, maybe he doesn't get thrown out of the EPA, but I can say this, he definitely wants him to become the Attorney General. That is obviously his end goal here. He's hated Sessions in that position for a long time. Every month or so, he remembers to take him out in the public square and flog him. He doesn't want him in that position, and this tweet, I think, is proof of that.
Well, it's like the devil with the Trump administration. That's the scary part is, okay, Scott Pruitt leaves here, who might pop up next? You already got John Bolton, as a national security advisor, which to me is the most terrifying development we've seen during the entire administration. So who could possibly come after Scott Pruitt?
Okay, and then finally, I want to turn to John Kelly because I think that's actually in today's news maybe the most interesting part. So he apparently, along with Jeff Sessions, are the people who want Pruitt out because Pruitt's trying to move up and create all this drama, et cetera, and causing trouble for the administration. Actually, a smart move by Kelly to try to get rid of this guy before he blew up on them, which he did this week. But the machinations against Kelly are the more interesting part because he's the chief of staff. That is the most important position, arguably. It's who determines who gets to see the president and who doesn't. That's why there's a lot of knives out for him because he's been blocking Kushner and even Ivanka to some degree, and Corey Lewandowski, and all those guys are leaking against him. So the president doing this childish thing of, well, I'm not going to put you in the meetings, and I'm not going to, tell you my decisions. Oh yeah, there's a tariff. I didn't tell you, right? Joffrey-like, et cetera. It does not bode well for Kelly. Kelly's allies are telling CBS News that no, his retreat is strategic. No, it's not. Okay, he's getting sidelined and he's humiliated and embarrassed.
As he should be, as should anyone who is willing to work for this president should be.
Yeah, and John Kelly, apparently according to his allies, is hoping to just at least make it 1 year, and that would be in July. I'm not sure he's gonna make it. And I think that Kelly is in bigger trouble than Pruitt because Trump doesn't like no. Trump doesn't like being told that he's an idiot. Now, Kelly doesn't say it that way because he's a smart guy. He goes, oh, Mr. President, that's a wonderful idea. But, right, and he phrases it in a immature way, but Trump doesn't like that, and he throws temper tantrums, and he just wants to get rid of Kelly so that he could go back to making the mess that he enjoys. He's like, where's my Play-Doh? So Kelly's days are probably numbered.
It's amazing how each person that's been put into some of these very important positions, whether it's education, whether it is housing, or on top of the environment, each one has almost been put in there to totally dismantle it from the beginning. That has been the agenda. I don't think that any of this it should be a surprise to any of us because this has been his agenda from the very beginning. It is a total pro-corporate stance. And that's why we even see a large number of Democrats on bills that I'm astonished that we have any Democrats voting yes on, that are voting yes on these things because they're making sure that those bills get passed because it suits the agenda of what we have now in our House and our Senate. This is what we have in America.
Yeah, it's really gross. We got to go. But yesterday on Rebel headquarters, we had a fun debate. Deidre Abood versus Allison Hartson, two just Democrats, both running for Senate. They debated who has the more conservative opponent. And that is a hell of a debate. But Kyrsten Sinema, who is a so-called Democrat and now running for that Senate seat against Deidre, votes with Trump 56% of the time.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable, unbelievable, and exactly the point that Amy's making. That's why we're gonna have real progressives. So I wanna show the links for Amy. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. It's been a great hour. Everybody make sure that you go out there. Hey, just at a bare minimum, go to amyforthepeople.com, check out our positions, check out our website. If you're certainly in Nevada's 4th district or anywhere in Nevada, go volunteer. And even if you're outside, you can make phone calls. So make sure you go to that link. And then, of course, if you are not running on corporate PAC money, as Amy is not, then you're going to need those donations to make sure that you could hire staff, you could have a ground game, you could do some digital ads. All of that is super, super important. Thank you for joining us, Amy.
Thank
really
you for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Yes, we're going to have a whole nother power panel in a minute when we come back. As we go to the break, I've been telling you about shoptyt.com today. Partly just to rub it in the NRA's face because I love this new shirt that we have.
It's great.
Yes, but a little promo about that as we go to break here.
New to ShopTYT, when you share with friends and they use your referral link, they'll get a 15% off coupon and you get a $5 discount. Here's how. Go to shoptyt.com, click rewards program at the bottom right corner, create an account or log in. Click rewards program again, scroll to share with friends, click tweet and send a tweet to your friends. It's that easy.
We talk about TYT Army being so strong. Usually they help us run our show. Now they're gonna help us run the country.
Like this. It's time that we reclaim democracy for the people.
We had a huge victory for Wolfpack.
When Lincoln said this was a country by, of, and for, he said of the people, not of corporations.
Our representatives don't represent us. Whoa, democracy!
United!
We are!
We are!
Too strong! There's thousands of volunteers, and you can be among them.
With Wolfpack, the mission is so clear.
Money is killing our democracy.
96% of Americans want it.
When you get the power back, oh, that feels good. This is just the beginning. Let's go get them, man. Up and at them. Knock, knock. We're coming for them! PAC.com.
Patience. It's a virtue. They think you can put me in a box. But you can't stifle a revolution. Cenk Uygur, you started something, an idea. The truth and honesty matter above all else. And the people love you for it. And for a while, so did I. We could have stood united, a political force of reckoning upon our foes, the hypocrites, the phonies, the unjust. But you put me in this box.
Cenk! No!
You began without me. You began without me. But God as my witness, I will be the one to finish it.
There on this frontier we call the internet, there's a lot of bad folks out to get you. For years, corporate media barons and right-wing rustlers have tried to keep the status quo around these parts. But lucky for us, there's a man who's fighting back. They call him Cenk Uygur, a.k.a. the original outlaw, a.k.a. El Jefe. He just rode into town slinging the truth.
Mayweather will knock out Pacquiao. Floyd beats his wife.
Drop it. All right, back on the Young Turks. New power panel. Okay, Alona's still here. Brett Ehrlich and Anna Kasparian.
Hey.
Power panel. Is that good enough,
Yeah,
Anna?
good job, Cenk.
Okay,
Yeah, after the fact, that was great.
New power panel, whatevs. Okay, a couple of quick tweets, then we got a lot of great stories for you guys. Art Murray says, Trump is his own chief of staff. Buckle up. Agreed. Adrian Ginn says Trump is trying to put Pruitt in to replace Sessions to protect himself and fighting Kelly to remove Pruitt. Now, that's, I think, all very likely and certainly possible. But you know, as I was reading your tweet, Adrian, it sparked a thought in me. For a lot of other people, maybe even including John Kelly, who's former general, etc., Pruitt's corruption is the bug, it's a problem, right? But for Trump, it might actually be the feature, it might be the solution. So
solution in what regard? Like getting rid of Sessions?
No. So you get rid of Sessions, and Pruitt is so corrupt, he'll do anything.
Right.
And so as Attorney General, you need me to fire the special counsel? No problem. You need me to do X, Y, Z? I'm the most brazen guy in government.
He is pretty brazen. But if he starts getting more attention than Trump, positive attention in any way, or written articles about how he has more power or influence than Trump, he'll be out.
Yeah, I hear you. So it's an interesting drama, of course, which is what Trump loves. All right, last tweet is Sean Phoenix. Teachers are fighting for just a $10,000 raise, but Pruitt just gives a $56,000 raise and sees no big deal in it. By the way, that was to one of his good friends from Oklahoma, and it was closer to $57,000, which is actually the average salary in America. That was the size of the raise he gave him. He says crap like this shows how much they really don't care about working class people.
Right.
Exactly. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right, we begin with Syria and an incredible report by the Washington Post. It appears that Donald Trump is in disagreement with his own generals in regard to Syria and whether or not US troops should pull out of Syria. Now, first, let me give you some context about the current US involvement in Syria. Currently, we have about 2,000 troops on the ground, and we have already spent $30 billion in Syria, and there has been a request to spend an additional $18 billion by the end of this year. Now, Trump wants to take a more Machiavellian approach when it comes to Syria. He would like to take some extreme action and pull out as soon as possible, whereas the generals believe that there's really no victory in sight. In fact, there's a lot of disagreement about what victory means in this case, and they would like to remain in Syria indefinitely. Now, according to the Washington Post, Trump's words, both in public and private, describe a view that war should be brutal and swift, waged with overwhelming firepower, and in some cases, with little regard for civilian casualties. Trump also urged the CIA to start aiming its drones in Syria. He had said, if you can do it in 10 days, get it done. So the Obama administration did not want to utilize weaponized drones in Syria. They believed in the use of surveillance drones, but they did not want to do drone strikes in Syria. Trump comes into office and he changes that particular policy. Now, when the agency's head of drone operations explained that the CIA had developed special munitions to limit civilian casualties, the president seemed unimpressed, watching a previously recorded strike in which the agency held off on firing until the target had wandered away from a house with his family inside. Trump asked, "Why did you wait?" So he wanted the family members of that target to also essentially die in that drone strike. And that's really the biggest takeaway from this Washington Post piece. And just to be clear, senior administration officials who are obviously close with Trump spoke to reporters of the Washington Post about this.
All right, so 3 layers to this story. First of all, the most horrifying one is the last one there. They got the guy. It's not like the guy got away and he's like, damn it, why'd you wait? I don't mind killing the family members if it means getting him. No, they got him and he's like, why didn't you gratuitously kill his family too? Because the guy's a monster, he's a sociopath. He has no empathy. Kids could be in that building. He's like, why didn't you murder the kids? Maybe there's a 3-year-old in there. Why didn't we execute him? And so he's admonishing his military there for not killing civilians. I can't describe how monstrous that is. So now when you go to the other parts of it, the CIA has intelligence in their name. It's Central Intelligence Agency. They are supposed to collect intelligence. That was supposed to be the whole point of the CIA. Now we know that they've gone far beyond that mandate for a long, long time. Obama did plenty of drone strikes and killed plenty of people, including civilians. So, but in Syria, he said, look, the CIA should stick to intelligence. So you could use the drones to collect that information. But with that information, if we want to do a strike, it's not like Obama didn't do strikes. He did a ton of strikes inside of Syria. He's like, then we'll have the military do the strike after you collect the intelligence, because I don't want the CIA to be a rogue operation that runs away and starts killing people when they're supposed to be just collecting intelligence. Now, the third part of this, you might be surprised, I agree with Trump on. When he said, let's withdraw 2,000 troops, great, hallelujah. I think that them being in the middle of that conflict does us no good at all. And some of the people that we have armed in Syria are disastrous. We're getting hit on all sides, and it hasn't even gotten disastrous
in terms of being hit as much as it could be. I mean, this is kind of an appetizer for what it could turn out to be. So get them out, get them out, get them out. But what happens? The military-industrial complex comes in, and the one decent idea that Trump has, they're like, don't you dare do it. And then he's a child and he bows his head and goes, okay, I won't, daddy. And so that one good idea is gone. But when he yells at him to kill civilians, my guess is that will be executed. And by the way, it has been. The Intercept has reported we are now killing civilians at a much greater rate than we were on, even under Obama.
Yeah, from the military-industrial complex's standpoint, you'd think they'd be all for waiting for the families to be separate from the targets, because no one sees their dad get killed and goes, you know what, Mr. Trump, thank you for just killing my dad. It creates a lose a terrorist, gain a terrorist situation. So by Trump's logic, if you follow his logic, you should kill the whole family. You should kill everybody there, because it's such a quagmire. The only solution from this logic alone is to get rid of everyone there, because all you do is create more and more crap. The problem is Trump looks at this the way, from like a World War II type of war standpoint, where like there's states and you defeat them, and then afterwards you go in and then you get out and you move and you move on. This is more of a Vietnam type situation where people are fighting for the land they grew up on in their lives in relation to other forces that are at work on the ground there. And that's something that he doesn't understand because he stayed home during Vietnam.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is the other point is, and I'm not like I have not served, overseas in war, but all the veterans I've spoken to, have interviewed over the years, anybody would tell you that kind of a statement where all war should be brutal, swift, kill as many civilians as possible, sounds like it's coming from a guy who has never actually been in war and doesn't know what actually happens there. But it's funny because you mentioned World War II. Do you know what I was thinking of while I was also listening to you read the quotes there, Cenk? There was a great op-ed in the Washington Post a couple of months ago, maybe, or maybe it was right around the Oscars, because we have a number of Hollywood films that have all been lionizing Winston Churchill. And so there was this great op-ed that was like, well, I know that we've now, made him out to be this incredible hero because of World War II, but it listed one example after another where he advocated for using chemical weapons, where he advocated for mass civilian casualties, where he advocated for incredibly racist and prejudiced policy and didn't care. And it terrifies me. I mean, I hope history won't be kind to Donald Trump. I can't really see how it will be in any way, but it's a good thing to pay attention to these things and remember, because one of the things that we were also, I think, afraid of during the Obama administration and calling out his civil liberties violations was the precedent that it would set and how it would open the door for whoever came next to potentially do worse with it. And now we have Donald Trump.
That's exactly right. And what's interesting in this dynamic is, I don't know who I side with, because, well, first of all, I wish that we didn't intervene in the first place. And I know that there are people that disagree with that, and humanitarian, people will mention humanitarian crises as a reason to get involved. But once you get involved, now you're dealing with a very difficult question, because Trump is approaching this from an ignorant place. And let me finish what I mean by that. He doesn't understand the nuances of foreign policy. He also doesn't seem to understand why we really get involved in foreign conflict in the first place. It's not for humanitarian reasons. It's not to help anyone. It's because we do have that military-industrial complex. And as you are about to find from all the different military members that spoke to the Washington Post on this, they want perpetual war. They want to remain in Syria because there really is no solution to this. Their idea is, no, we have to stay there forever, because the second we leave, then all of a sudden there'll be the emergence of a new terrorist organization. And so Trump's perspective is, no, but we need to win. So let's go in, let's go hard, let's get out.
He doesn't get it. He's like, what do you mean?
But he does get it. He does get it. And the thing he gets is that if he simplifies, he can win a rhetorical debate in public among the people he seeks approval from. If he's losing, he had this moment where he was kind of losing faith from evangelicals and other people and anti-immigration type people that were kind of out there in the ether. And then he came out and was like, we're gonna, go send the National Guard to the border. And with this, it's like, we're just gonna bomb the hell out of them and leave. Those are things that are very simple and something that when you go through what the generals are saying, one side can interpret that the military-industrial complex wants this ethereal concept of victory and failure, but he just wants to make it simple again because that's an easier argument to win, and that's whether it's a strategic move or not, or just his dumb stumbling into things that seem to work in the public,
the dumb stumbling is certainly, in my opinion, the way Trump operates. I highly doubt he understands the involvement in Turkey, Turkey's targeting of Kurds in Syria, and how he doesn't understand that, doesn't understand Russia's involvement or what fuels Russia's intentions in Syria. It's a complicated, complex mess, and he has no interest in intelligence briefings, has no idea what he's doing. But oddly enough, the idea of pulling out is much better than wanting to remain there forever.
But he's the perfect tool of the military-industrial complex in that way too, right? Because you have to create a boogeyman. Yes. And in order to have one, but also that's what we've done. If you look at, of course, the war in Iraq, if you look at ISIS. And so Trump is like the perfect guy to go out there and say, we have this enemy, we need to have a decisive victory, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny, the military-industrial complex, you'd think they'd brag more about, and Trump would want to brag more about how much damage they've done to ISIS, because they actually have done a considerable amount of damage. It started under Obama and has continued under Trump, but they don't brag about that. Why? Because then we might want to leave. So that's
Trump does brag about it, but you don't hear his generals bragging about it.
Well, no, but Trump barely does, though. I mean, you know how big of a braggart he is. Mm-hmm. You'd think he'd be pounding his chest nonstop. I beat ISIS, I beat ISIS. But look, last thing on his misunderstanding, which is he thinks, well, like World War II, Churchill was, in a lot of ways monstrous, as Alona pointed out, and we won, and we beat the bad guys. We dropped a nuke, we won, we beat the bad guys. But the Japanese government, for example, and as hideous as they were back then, still cared about their people. They had pride in being Japanese, and they didn't want all their people killed. ISIS doesn't care about the people there. They regularly execute them, they attack them, half of them they despise and would love to murder. Mm-hmm. So if you dropped a nuke in the middle of that area, they'd be like, thank you on a couple of counts. Certainly not the guys underneath the nuke, I grant you that. Okay, but for the idea and the ideology of ISIS, one, half the people you killed are Shia, so they're thrilled about it. And those are the guys they were trying to kill anyway. Another percentage are the people they were fighting at the same place. You dropped a nuke. It doesn't discriminate. It also kills their opponents, right? But most importantly, it allows them to say to the rest of the Muslim world, we told you, these guys are monsters. They kill children. He wanted to kill the family members. He wanted to kill the family members. You see, there is no appeasing America. You have to join our fight. So in that sense, he's their best ally. And look, we dropped more bombs in Vietnam than in all of World War II, and we still didn't win. Mm-hmm. The bombing is not the answer unless you're in the business of selling bombs.
And one final thing that I do want to mention, while it is true that the effort to defeat ISIS has been somewhat successful, remember, it's like playing whack-a-mole in the Middle East. You defeat one terrorist group, and then all of a sudden there is the reemergence of another. The Taliban is still in Pakistan, seeking refuge, just waiting. And so there's no winning. There's no winning, and it's a difficult, complicated situation. And when you have a president who says, and I quote, things like, "We'll be coming out of Syria very soon," it makes you worry about our take on foreign policy abroad.
But just one other thing I'd add to that too is we don't like to admit our mistakes, obviously, or acknowledge our shortcomings or some of our monstrous actions abroad. And that is a very big problem, because if you never acknowledge that you lost, that you messed something up, that you killed hundreds of thousands of people, displaced millions of people, then you just keep doing it over and over again. And yet we have this kind of attitude politically that it's unpatriotic to mention that. Right. And then and that's what drives me so crazy.
Well, look, that's a huge loss for us. It's a huge loss for the area. But again, if you're in the business of selling weapons, it's not a loss. That was the whole point.
Yeah. And like the fundamental idea also behind like the Islamic State, you got ISIL, you got ISIS, it's just they change where it is at the end. Levant, Syria, that's a great enemy to have because it's just an idea that could pop up anywhere. And so you could still, initiate military moves where you sense that to start arising again.
All right, we got to take a break, guys. When we come back, Facebook on a secret mission. Not a pleasant one, but I might defend them on that.
You're crazy.
Okay.
Talk about apologizing over and over again and doing the same thing.
Yeah, well, and someone has created Elysium. We'll explain.
My name is Allison Hartson. I am a national director with Wolfpack.
Pop on those 3D glasses, guys, because it's about to get crazy.
The goal of Wolfpack is to get an amendment to the US Constitution that will allow us to have free and fair elections.
It's not the only issue, but it's the first issue, and that's money in politics.
The goal of Wolfpack is to get a representative democracy back in this country.
The corruption issue affects every other issue. You name it. You can go down the list: education, the environment, the military, the economy.
People at the top that are making the most money are the ones that are dictating all of the rules. That is the antithesis of a democracy.
Wolfpack has the most intelligent, plausible way to get money out of politics.
We have the logical plan.
So what we're trying to do is to use the power that our forefathers gave us in the US Constitution through Article 5.
Article 5 is a specific procedure set up in the Constitution to propose amendments to it.
You have to work state by state. And you need 34 states to make that happen.
Vermont, California, Illinois, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. We've passed in those states so far.
One of the hardest parts of my job is that I have to follow her. Give me a break.
My name is Mike Manetta. I am a national director with Wolfpack.
We have decided to move Wolfpack from defense to offense.
We travel from state to state constantly. This year, she was gone from January 2nd until, I think, May, without ever going home once. So that's dedication.
I get frustrated and want to quit every other week. No, I'm kidding. Kind of. There are definitely really tough moments, but the most amazing thing about it all is that we get through it together and we get stronger because of it, and we just keep each other going. Like Mike and I, when I'm down, he like pushes me forward, and when he's down, I push him forward, and we keep on going and work like a team like that. And that's what we tell our state teams, and that's why they need each other as well, because it takes a lot of tenacity and a lot of perseverance and resiliency to be able to get legislation passed, period, let alone to fix corruption in the most powerful country in the world. When we passed in California, that was my first win that I got to personally enjoy. That was amazing. I think I was hooked, officially hooked at that point.
I was in Rhode Island when we passed. I was probably there every single day that week, just standing outside, holding up signs, waiting for legislators. 2 years of really, really hard work condensed into this one amazing moment of victory.
To have those moments, it literally makes everything that we do so much more rewarding.
If people are truly sick and tired of sitting by and watching what's happening to this country, and if people are truly sick and tired of just talking about it and tweeting about it and liking it and sharing it on Facebook, it's time to take action and get out on the streets and get involved and learn how to get involved even if you don't know how to.
You cannot just complain from the sidelines in this day and age. There is too much going on.
We need to do this now. There is no time to waste. Anybody who wants to get involved, is curious, is a little scared, but would like to know how to possibly start learning how to make this happen, should go to wolf-pac.com, wolf-pac.com, and sign up to volunteer. No experience necessary.
The facts are on our side. The history is on our side. The public opinion is on our side, both on the policy and the procedure. We're going to find more success, and we will get this amendment.
There's no other option for me.
All right, back on Young Turks. Historically speaking, says Trump is a mob guy through and through. Of course, he wants to kill the families too. Interesting analogy. Julie G says these NRA TV trolls really don't want to mess with the Young Turks, do they? They must know that the TYT army is too strong.
Those videos are so fun.
Yeah. I mean, he made I didn't realize it. I just saw it right before the show. He made like 1 million videos about us.
I know, it's awesome.
Wow.
Okay, then Kank says this, and he pretends not to know your name when it was in the graphic. It says Anna right there.
It's so good because he's obviously watched a ton of videos where everybody's name is said out loud.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, TYT Army. Release the hounds. So go forward and troll the NRA by buying this shirt, $5,000 a bullet. ShopTYT.com. That's why I wore it, just to troll them today. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right. The Atlantic has just decided to fire a conservative writer on its site. Kevin Williamson is his name, and previously he was an op-ed writer for National Review. Well, I guess everyone's an op-ed writer for National Review. But nonetheless, this all started when some of his tweets from the past came to everyone's attention. Apparently in those tweets, he had talked about the issue of abortion. And since he comes from a very conservative perspective, he had this to say. So his firing last month had already drawn scrutiny over past tweets in which he stated that the law should treat abortion like any other homicide, and that for punishment, I have hanging more in mind. Those tweets have since been deleted. So when that happened, the editor-in-chief for The Atlantic decided not to fire him. So his name is Jeffrey Goldberg, and he essentially said, look, we can't judge people based on their worst tweets. And I actually agree with him on that. All of us at some point have probably tweeted something that we regret and don't actually mean. So,
no.
Okay. So the editor-in-chief wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. However, it turns out that Media Matters did a little digging and found some of Kevin Williamson's comments from back in 2014 during a National Review podcast. Now we have that podcast for you now, so you can take a listen and judge for yourselves, and then I'll give you an update on what Williamson's fate is. I kind of already told you, but still.
And someone challenged me on my views of abortion, saying if you really thought it was a crime, you would support things like, life in prison, no parole, for treating it as a homicide. And I do support that. In fact, as I wrote, what I have in mind is hanging. We already have degrees of culpability and punishment, or other sorts of homicide cases. We have, including some laws that I don't agree with, like laws that enhance penalties for murder when it involves a government official or police officer, something like that. Hate crimes laws, things like that. But we also make distinctions between certain kinds of murders and certain cases. The shockingness and the cruelty of the crime, it makes a difference. Two guys get in a fight in a bar and one of them pulls out a gun and shoots the other, is treated differently from some guy kidnaps a 90-year-old woman and tortures her and murders. Yeah, and that's okay. So whereas you and I don't think agree quite on the underlying issue of abortion, at least the degree of criminality. I think we can agree on that there's certainly reasonable cases to be made for differentiating. My broader point here is, of course, that I am, as I'm kind of squishy on capital punishment in general, but that I'm absolutely willing to see abortion treated like a regular homicide under the criminal code. Sure.
It makes a lot of sense. He's so pro-life that he would like to see women who've had abortions hung, or hanged, I should say. So after that podcast came to light and Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief for The Atlantic, had a conversation with Williamson, Goldberg decided to in fact fire him. So let me give you Goldberg's reasoning, and this came in the form of a memo that was sent out to everyone at The Atlantic. He said, let's go to graphic 46, the language he used in this podcast and in my conversations with him in recent days made it clear that the original tweet did in fact represent his carefully considered views. He continued to say, the tweet was not merely an impulsive, decontextualized, heat of the moment post, as Kevin had explained it. Furthermore, the language used in the podcast was callous and violent. This runs contrary to the Atlantic's tradition of respectful, well-reasoned debate and to the values of our workplace.
So Jeffrey Goldberg's getting a lot of heat, of course, from a lot of different directions. From liberals initially saying you should have never hired this guy in the first place, and then you've got conservatives now saying this is an outrage, and
this is the thought police, etc. I mean, we just want to hang some women, and you guys are being all thought policey about it. So let me be among the few people who says that I think Jeffrey Goldberg probably got it exactly right. So what I mean by that is the tweet from 2014. You got to have a really high barrier for firing someone over an old tweet. So the fact that he didn't fire him after that, I think was the right move. People tweet stupid stuff all the time, and it's in the past. And if he's past it, no problem. But to me, the most important part of Goldberg's quote was that he talked to him. That's what we ask for on the show all the time. Hey, instead of just firing people, have a conversation, bring them in, hear them out, whether it's left wing or right wing, and see what their current ideas are. And then you might even want to do that publicly at some point and go. And if Kevin Williamson has a different stance now, maybe he explains it, not in like a mea culpa and forced apologies, etc., but like, hey, this is what I used to think, this is what I think now. And it turns out Goldberg did have that conversation with him, and he's like, oh no, he still believes those ridiculous, outrageous things. And if he does, then he's got to go.
Right. I'm not arguing that we should lock up this guy for saying what he said. I think that the Atlantic is completely, so that guy originally, the guy with the beard down here that looks like one of those like bald guys with like the magnet hair that you can move from the top to the bottom, that guy. I think that guy is totally within his rights to say what he said. I totally get like his almost like modest proposal approach to it, but the Atlantic gets to choose who their writers are, and they get to choose what their editorial stance is and how they present ideas, and they're totally within their rights to disagree with people that formulate and present ideas in this way.
I just feel like there's not enough. I want to know who does the research for all of these organizations, not only the Atlantic, the New York Times. Other publications have run into the same thing where they hire someone to be an opinion writer. Then, of course, the internet does the digging and something comes out and then they're forced to fire them after the fact. But like, shouldn't that be, especially if you're a media organization, a journalistic organization, that you do the research before you sign the contract, give someone a paycheck?
I hear you, Ilona, but no one does research as well as the internet.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right? So, and it might be Media Matters in this case, etc. But once people start digging, right, they dig and dig and dig until they get something. And so, in that light, one more note of mixed feelings about this. So I say Goldberg's right because I wouldn't hire someone or want to keep someone who thinks we should hang women who had abortions. I think that's a monstrous thought, right?
That's a lot of, state-sponsored executions, by the way.
You just hear him disappear up his own.
But I like that he was like, I don't know, I'm kind of squishy on capital punishment.
But when it comes to women, I'd like to hang them.
Yeah,
right?
but I think that's
really
a really
not sure
important
where I
point.
stand on it.
I think that's such an important point because it's, when it comes to, he went on this long spiel about all these different types of, homicide, murder, premeditated, whatever, different standards. He agrees with it. But when it comes to women and abortion, yeah, hanging. Like, that's what I want. I want to see them hanged.
Yeah. It's just like an unfunny stand-up bit that they just want to be like a shock jock on. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and I've been there. So, and I'm gonna get to that in a second. The reason I say I'm slightly mixed though is because, look, if he says, I think it's a life, so I think it's a crime, I get it, that actually is intellectually consistent. If he says we should execute the women because it's a homicide, and just stopped it there, I would find that opinion to be outrageous and horrific, but at least I understand it on an intellectual level. When he gets to the hanging, there's a certain gratuitous joy in that that seems particularly misogynistic. And that's what puts me over the top and goes, no, there's something off with this guy, which then leads me to my other point, which is you're trying to hire a conservative, and I get the impulse to do that. Good luck to you, brother. You're gonna find a conservative in this country that hasn't said or done something horrific. I mean, that's not the world we live in today.
I saw him as just drawing two columns together. He has the one that's about if it's abortion is murder, murder is the death penalty, and another column where he's like, when we do the death penalty, why do we put someone in a chair and inject them with stuff? We should accept it for as brutal as it is and hang them. But by putting all those things together, I think the Atlantic is totally within their rights to say like, whoa, you just said we should hang mothers who've been through some crap.
But I think the problem is more of the propensity within the media to want to make everything equal, right?
Yes.
Give everything a fair side. And so when you're saying like, we want to put a good conservative onto our roster, rather than just finding someone who is smart, who writes and says things that are nuanced, you want to make sure like, oh, do they have some positions that we consider to be really right or really conservative that might be like a, a punch to someone's face, and then you think that that's justifiable.
Right, and then in your search for the token conservative or token liberal, whatever you're doing, right? Unfortunately, what ends up happening is you find someone who's on the extreme end of the spectrum that doesn't actually represent the thoughts and beliefs of the majority of conservatives. I hope, by the way, I'm right on this, that the majority of conservatives believe that women who have abortions should be hanged. But again, when you look for that conservative perspective for your paper or whatever publication you have, I think that you're gonna end up running into the wrong people.
But maybe that'll be kicked up, that editorial will be kicked up being so polemic in the Facebook algorithm.
But it gets so many clicks.
But that's exactly right. But actually that phenomenon has been around a long time because I know it, because I lived it. Look, a part of the reason I say that is because there is a bit of a competition to out shock jock one another when you're a conservative. I did that. And I wrote terrible things when I was a conservative because the idea is like, oh, I'll show you, I could be an even bigger dirtbag than the other conservative. And because that is what is rewarded. That's when people go, oh my God, this guy is bold. He's gonna hang women in the public square, go get him. And that's what helped Kevin Williamson to rise in the first place. And then it caught the Atlantic's attention, then they hire him and they realize, oh, that's why conservatives get popular in this country.
Right. All right, so let's move on to the Facebook story because I wanna make sure we get to this, and I think it's terrifying. Cenk might disagree. New information indicates that Facebook was working with specific doctors in an effort to convince hospitals to share anonymized information on their patients and then essentially match that data set with their own data set in order to offer certain healthcare services to individuals. Now, Facebook asked several major US hospitals to share this anonymous data about their patients, such as their illnesses and their prescription information. Now, Facebook proposed using a common computer science technique called hashing to match individuals who existed in both data sets. Facebook says that the data would have been used only for research conducted by the medical community. So I will give you an example, and this is actually similar to an example that a Facebook spokesperson gave to the media. So for instance, let's say there is a particular patient at a hospital who has heart issues, and that person, based on the data on Facebook, is kind of lonely, doesn't have a lot of friends, doesn't have many family members. Essentially what would happen if this project came to fruition is the doctor or the health professionals would know about the lack of loved ones in this person's life and then offer like a follow-up to check in on that person just to make sure he or she is doing well. So that's an example of how this data could be used. But here's the biggest issue. There was no talk of consent, right? And there was no talk of disclosure or transparency. Now, it was intending to match up with user data it had collected and help the hospitals figure out which patients might need special care or treatment. After the whole Cambridge Analytica thing happened, Facebook decided to table this, and they claim that this work has not been progressed past the planning phase, and we have not received, shared, or analyzed anyone's data.
So here's my defense of Facebook. First, let me explain what I'm not defending them on. So when they say, oh no, you can't, it's not gonna reveal personal information, but you match the two records so you know who it is. And in fact, even in your own example of sending the nurse over to them to help them, how would you know who to send the nurse to?
Exactly.
Okay. So don't get me wrong, I get it. They're gonna know your identity, right?
And they're gonna use it to market like at-home care facilities to the distant relatives that live in Arizona, even though the patient's living in Florida.
You know what? Look, you guys are preempting my argument, and I might have a preemptive surrender here in a second. But look, on the other hand, I think that it could be helpful to the medical community, and maybe I'm being naive here, but I'd be a little surprised if the higher ups in Facebook didn't think that they were doing some good in the world and thought like, hey, maybe this will earn us some
positive goodwill, and then after Cambridge Analytica, they're like, oh, we have people's private health information. No, we didn't mean to do that.
Yeah,
I'm naive. What do you guys think?
No, I'm kind of with you in a way. They're Silicon Valley people. Of course, they think that they're saving the world.
Yeah, it is a Zuckerberg hospital.
That to me is not shocking at all. But I think that we genuinely have a problem in this country where we don't collect enough data. Right? And I don't say that ironic, in that kind of way. Obviously, the government does it. Obviously, these companies do it, but we don't study and research problems on a mass scale enough in this country. And so, of course, we have to find a way to really address health problems, address the problems of people not having certain support systems, but you still have to ask people. You still have to have consent, and you can't just collect it without telling them.
So I just come from a much more pessimistic position on pretty much everything. And so I understand that, look, I'm sure they think they have the best intentions in mind, so I'll give them that. However, Facebook's whole business model is selling our data to advertisers. They're doing this so hospitals and healthcare professionals can advertise services to us. That's what this is all about. It's not about offering, better healthcare. I just don't see that happening. I mean, we have a huge issue in the country with really bad healthcare already, and it seems like there's a lot of pushback from the healthcare community in terms of improving it. I don't think that Facebook is going to be that puzzle piece that fixes
Facebook
things.
is hiring 10,000 people to monitor news. That is a lot of people. That gives you an idea of the scope of how many people work at Facebook. So I don't think that the project managers on the medical research project are evil people. I know for a fact that people who are the higher ups at Facebook are really great, fantastic people who do want to make a difference in the world. But there's another team that's going to monetize this eventually. There's another team in charge of protecting that data, and that might fail, and this might get into the wrong hands. The frustrating thing that drives me absolutely crazy with Zuckerberg and the people in Silicon Valley is how good they think they're being. And they need like a shock collar on their neck. They don't realize that they're doing it again. And every time there's another apology, they're doing it again. You're gonna be like, no, information will save the world. Well, you're doing it again. You need to, when you have an idea that requires getting information that people have not necessarily explicitly and knowingly given permission for you to mine, you need to not just take that from their internet profiles, you need to go to their house and get that information that way. So that maybe you can realize just how freaking creepy you're being.
It is creepy. And by the way, I mean, look, there is a lot of attention placed on Facebook, and just think about all of the different platforms you use to buy things related to your health. I mean, they have that data on you, right? I have used Amazon, for instance, to purchase supplements. And so they know what kind of supplements I like. They know what kind of vitamin deficiencies I have. It's concerning. We sometimes, without really thinking about it, give away certain data to companies that have a vested interest in selling that data.
But I think that's the important thing here is obviously like we're going through a shift mentally when it comes to the way that we look at these tech companies, which I think is very important because we've looked at them as these like benevolent beings for such a long time because they're leaders in progress and innovation and technology. They're driving us forward, but they're trying to make money, at the end of the day. And we, though, as the users, have just been doing it willingly. It's not like there has never been a story out there telling you that all of your data is being collected. It's not like you don't have the option to read the terms of service agreement on everything, but we just click through, we just move on by. I understand, but I think that we need to like take a little bit of responsibility then in at least pushing back.
I'd say there's a difference in the reasonable presumption.
Facebook never got the big pressure put on them to make opting in rather than having to opt out of privacy protections until now, right? But it wasn't until like people made it a really big deal.
They have made that change from being like, we just put stuff on our platform to like, okay, we will start to try to make take an active role in it. It's just, they sound like Bruce in Finding Nemo, that shark who's like, consumers are friends, not data. And then they get a little sniff of how they can get the data, and then their eyes glaze over and they voraciously eat everyone's information.
Yeah.
No, let's just call it what it is. Brett has won the day. So I switched my position to Brett's minus the shock collar. Okay, you're right. A lot of people probably want to do right in that building when they first started the project. You're right, they can't resist the data. There's no way they're gonna go for a system where you have to opt in instead because that would cost them billions upon billions of dollars.
And people wouldn't opt in, like let's keep it real.
Right, no, and that makes a giant difference in how much data you have, and data is their business model. And finally, there's apparently a building 8 in Facebook where they do experimental projects.
Sounds great.
Okay. Oh boy.
Building 8, Area 51, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I know. Scary. Let the conspiracy theories begin. Okay, don't do that, by the way. Don't do that. Don't do the shock collar and don't do the conspiracy theories. All right, we got to take a break. Elysium when we return.
We had a referendum asking the voters, hey.
T-minus 1 minute till landing. TYT broadcast controllers, listen up. Give me a go, no go for landing. Sound?
Audio is hovering at minus 12 decibels. We're go.
Streaming?
We're go.
Camera crew?
We're go.
Mission control?
We're go.
Snacks?
We're good.
Iguana? Sir, we are go for landing. Okay, everybody. I want this to go off without a hitch.
Sir? I've been looking over this joke for the past hour, and with the Bannon firing now weeks old and waning in
English, Johnson, English. What are you trying to tell me?
This joke isn't going to land, sir.
Okay, everyone. Forget the old plan. From this moment on, we're improvising a new joke.
So this is where the show started, and this is where it was supposed to end. Now the joke was supposed to land here, but that's not gonna happen, obviously. So we need to come up with a new joke. Maybe here?
Hits are dropping, streams are failing, retweets are stopping.
40 seconds.
All right, team. We gotta find a way to make this fit into a joke about this that will appeal to them.
30 seconds.
The Trump joke's our safest option. Trying to land a Trump joke after this week's events is a suicide mission.
We are officially out of time. We need to act now.
Sir, I think our best course of action is to let Jink try to land a dad joke.
That's the deal?
That's the deal.
All right, everyone, to their stations.
Led by Germany, and some of the creditor nations like Netherlands and Finland.
Cameras, position.
Now,
social media team. Brace front follows. 10 seconds. As for the rest of us, all any of us can do now is wait and hope.
This is gonna be the worst disaster TYT has ever experienced.
With all due respect, sir, I think this will be the finest hour 2 yet.
We're ready to deal with the consequences. Giving mood. Angela Merkel's government seems to have signaled pronounced.
Come on, Jink.
Everyone, it's been a pleasure streaming with you.
Greek Prime Minister immediately picked up the phone to Putin and said, "You Putin any money in?" Okay, anyway.
TYT crew, the joke has landed.
All right, so right now I'm walking by Tim Robbins. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. Just going to walk by, see if he notices me, see if he recognizes me.
Student activism, community organizing.
It's cool, like Tim, he's acting like he doesn't see me, like he doesn't notice me. It's all right. It's cool. A lot of people are recognizing me. It's okay if Tim Robbins plays it cool. He is playing it cool. I'm going to walk this way. See if, I'll give him a chance to recognize. Let's see if he notices me. Ready?
For Bernie Sanders and for the leadership and the heart.
Maybe he didn't notice me because, my head was turned. It's probably because my head was turned. You think it was because my head was turned? I think it was because my head was turned.
All right, Young Turks, 2 quick tweets for you guys. Kerry G says, no, Trump doesn't understand the nuances of foreign policy. I'd be surprised if he understood the nuances of tying shoelaces.
That's good.
And Ishkabibble says the hate for women is just so apparent in these conversations, like women are domestic animals that shouldn't have any rights over their bodies or lives.
By the way, like in all of the articles and stories that I've read about that story, not a single quote, none of the conversations come from a single woman. Like no woman's quoted at all.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Who cares, right? What a woman has to say about it.
By the way, Carrie G, I just realized you made us LOL, literally laugh out loud. So t-shirt for you, okay? You can get one like this at shoptyt.com, but Carrie, you're getting a free one. You can get this one if you want, $5,000 a bullet. Okay, Stephen Abrams and Michelle Chevalier are our members of the day. tytnetwork.com/join to become a member. Get all of our programming, old school, aggressive progressives, the post games, and all the shows commercial free. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right. Traveling to space is admittedly extremely expensive, but luckily there is a company that is planning on launching a program, a hotel that will allow you to spend some time in space for a fraction of previous costs. Now, it'll cost only about $10 million, but here is what we know so far about a project that is possibly going to launch in the next 4 years. It's billed as the world's first luxury space hotel. It's known as Aurora Station, and it was announced at the Space 2.0 Summit in San Jose, California. So there is an image of what it would look like. Honestly, I have no interest in that.
Yeah, like that guy looks like he's going down a drain. Like that doesn't look fun, and he looks like he's in an awkward position. But Ida Roll is gonna love this.
He's all over it.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, the hotel will orbit Earth every 90 minutes, which means guests will see around 16 sunrises and sunsets every 24 hours.
I'll wait and
cool.
see them here.
But you're never gonna get any sleep.
I'm never gonna get $10 million.
Right. The sun's up again.
Exactly.
Problem number one.
I know. I told John, he got really excited. I'm like, John, you're not going to make $10 million in the entirety of your life.
You know who's going to be at this hotel are all the Silicon Valley people that we were just talking about.
Well, that's true, and all the Trump voters will think like, no, I'm going to get there, man. They better not take my, lower their estate tax, okay? Because I'm going to use it on this.
Okay, so let me give you more details. It was developed by US-based space technology startup Orion Span, and it's a fully modular space station, and it will host 6 people at a time, including 2 crew members for 12-day trips of space travel. It plans to welcome its first guests in 2022. Now, you would have to go through a training program in order to do this because obviously the conditions in space are a little different from the conditions here on Earth. So you would be doing 3 months of training, and the 12 days will be spent in low orbit. You'll be about 200 miles above Earth's surface. And as Alona mentioned, the hotel will orbit Earth every 90 minutes, which means guests will see around 16 sunrises and sunsets every 24 hours.
Does that mean that that's why it's so expensive, is like one night at the hotel only lasts 90 minutes? And then you get another one, and another one, and another one.
Well, when you break it down that way, I mean, every night might only be $500,000.
Is it $9.5 million a person?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so if you want to go as a couple, buckle up. So there's a lot that I love here. So they are also going to have you grow your own food there. I like the pretense of science. Like, I went up there because I wanted to grow food.
Do some research.
You know what? You can grow food in your backyard.
No. What I love about this is the people that can afford it have no interest in growing their own food. Like they will grow their own food here in the United States. They're not going to grow it, in space.
There's not a single person that can pay $9.5 million for this that doesn't have a gardener.
Yeah, exactly. You'd think it would come with like a continental breakfast at least. 9.5 million clams.
And then, but my favorite part is, so they do a bunch of things like to make you feel like you're actually doing something real up there instead of a vanity project. But they give it away at the end because when you land, they do a fake hero's welcome for you where they all cheer. I'm serious. That's part of the package.
Oh my God.
Like
That's amazing.
If you hadn't lost me yet, and if I had the money and I wanted to light it on fire and all this, at the end they're like, you get a hero's welcome. I'm like, I'm out. Like that's so weird. You just exposed me for the fraud that I am.
You would hate a hero's welcome. Like in the beginning of a show where you walk in and everybody has to clap for you and there's a fog
I don't
machine.
know what you're talking about. Or when I land in Jamaica and everybody goes nuts because I'm Mr. Jamaica.
But you think of the clientele, the target clientele here.
Exactly.
They're gonna want that. You want to be, applauded. Brush your shoulders off for doing what? For paying $10 million to do something?
It sounds so boring.
Oh,
like
that's
12 days. Have you ever gone to like a resort in the middle of nowhere for like 3 days and you're just like, oh my God, there's nothing to do. When I got married, we were like, where are we gonna go on our honeymoon? And I was like, should we go to like Bora Bora? Because that sounds fun. And people who'd been there are like, 2 days and you're pulling your hair out because there's nothing to do. You're in space, good luck.
Well, that's what I meant when I said I have no interest in this. I mean, you look at that capsule and it just, there's no room. Yeah, exactly. I'd want to get off in 24 hours max. I couldn't spend more time on that.
Do they have pitch and putt in there?
Your drive went 9 billion miles.
No, I'm with, unless Xanax works in space, I can't do it. I get so anxious.
Obviously, let's call this what it is, Elysium. And I've already got the movie. I'll give this idea away for free for you guys. They go up there and then Earth blows up.
Oh.
And then they got to figure out a way to get to a new planet and they actually have to grow their food.
I was gonna go more like murder mystery, like you're stuck in this thing and somebody just goes crazy and starts killing everyone.
Oh my God.
And you're in the
that's
capsule.
good too. Or
it's like a Get Out, but in space.
Or like an alien sneaks on board and then plants things inside your body. All right. Bye-bye.